All right, so you're locked in, ready for another deep dive,
Hmm.
and we've really fine-tuned these, to give you the absolute most bang for your buck in terms of knowledge. No filler, just straight to the good stuff.
That's right. And today, we're really getting into something I think a lot of you are going to find fascinating. The whole game of power dynamics and how to navigate the social landscape effectively. And it's like we're giving you a set of keys to unlock these mechanisms that are always working, whether you realize it or not.
Totally. We've gone through tons of historical examples, looked at how people have strategized throughout history. We've got stories of political maneuvering, ancient wisdom, and even some of the more, well, let's say thought-provoking ideas from books like The 48 Laws of Power. I mean, our sources for this one are all over the map, but that's what makes it so interesting, right? It's like a toolkit, but for understanding influence across all these different times and situations.
And that's exactly what we're aiming for here. Practical insights.
Yeah.
We're not getting bogged down in the weeds. We want to give you these memorable takeaways, the stuff that really makes you think, oh, wow, I never thought of it like that before.
Okay, so let's jump in, shall we? I mean, right off the bat, one of the sources hits us with this line: everything is judged by its appearance. What is unseen counts for nothing. Kind of makes you stop and think, doesn't it? It's like right away we're getting at something fundamental about how we size each other up, how we present ourselves to the world.
Absolutely. It sets the stage, and it leads us directly to Law 6, court attention at all cost. The point here isn't just about standing out from the crowd. It's about actively becoming a focal point, a magnet of attention. That's how the book puts it. And, think about it. In any kind of social setting, the person who commands that attention, they have a certain power.
Makes me think about all the ways people try to break through all the noise, right? And one of the best examples we found is good old P.T. Barnum. This guy was a master. But here's the really interesting part. Barnum almost seemed to understand that even bad press could be good for business. Remember that whole incident with the Reverend Ephraim K. Avery?
Ah, yes, where Barnum was mistakenly linked to some sort of scandal.
Exactly. But instead of shying away, it's almost like he played it up.
Barnum was brilliant in that way. He just got how people work. We're naturally drawn to drama, to the unusual. So even if people were talking about him in a negative way, they were still talking about him. He was staying relevant.
It's like even today with social media and everything, sometimes a negative tweet or something can actually boost someone's profile, right?
Yeah.
It's wild. But okay, now let's contrast that with Count Lustig. Talk about a different approach to the attention game. He wasn't exactly a showman like Barnum.
No, Lustig was all about subtlety, about creating an aura of mystery around himself. He didn't say much, and that actually made people more curious, made his words seem more profound than they probably were. Kind of like still waters run deep sort of thing.
So whether you go for the big, bold approach like Barnum or the quiet, enigmatic route like Lustig, it seems like the underlying principle is the same, right? You gotta grab people's attention. Now, let's shift gears a bit. What about using other people's efforts to your advantage? Law 7 tells us, get others to do the work for you, but always take the credit. Sounds a bit ruthless, maybe.
I think it's more about being strategic. It's not about taking advantage of people, but understanding how to delegate, how to set things up so that you're the one who ultimately benefits from the success.
And a great example of this is Louis XIV and his finance minister, Colbert. Colbert was incredible at managing the royal finances, made sure the money was flowing to the king.
And that gave Louis the resources to take on these massive projects, like the expansion of Versailles. He basically used the same architects and artisans who had worked for Fouquet, but he created something even grander, even more spectacular. Colbert laid the groundwork, but Louis got all the credit for the magnificence of Versailles.
Really highlights how you can use other people's talents and hard work to achieve these huge goals, right? But the key is to make sure you're positioned to get that recognition. Okay, now for a tactic that might seem a little counterintuitive, Law 12 talks about using honesty and generosity to disarm your victim. Sounds kind of sneaky.
It is, in a way. The idea here is that a well-timed act of kindness, a genuine gesture, can really lower someone's defenses. You build trust, and then you can use that to your advantage. The text even compares it to a Trojan horse.
And we see this play out in the story of Lord John Gordon and Jay Gould. Gordon comes across as this upstanding guy, helping Gould expose these fraudulent stock certificates related to the Erie Railroad.
Seems like a good deed, right?
Totally. But then, after he's built up this trust, Gordon proposes they partner up to take control of the railroad. It was all calculated. He wasn't being altruistic. He was setting Gould up.
Shows you how powerful it can be to project this image of virtue, even if it's not, entirely genuine, people let their guard down.
Right. It's like a reminder that things aren't always what they seem. Okay, let's talk about how to get what you want from people. Law 13 says, when asking for help, appeal to people's self-interest, never to their mercy or gratitude.
Cut and dry, right?
Yay.
It's saying, don't waste time with emotional appeals. Figure out what the other person wants, what's in it for them, and focus on that.
And the perfect example is the Athenian strategy with Corinth and Corcyra. Corinth was an ally, appealed to Athens based on their history, that whole you owe us kind of thing.
But Athens ended up siding with Corcyra, a newer player. And the reason? Corcyra had a better navy, which would make Athens stronger. It was a purely strategic decision. Self-interest trumped loyalty.
So always think about how your request benefits the other person. Frame it in a way that appeals to their own needs. All right, moving on to timing. This one is so important, but I think people often overlook it. Law 33 says to master the art of timing.
It's about being patient, about knowing when to strike. If you rush things, you look desperate. But if you wait for the right moment, your actions have so much more impact.
Bismarck's speech in 1850 is a great illustration. There was all this pressure for Prussia to go to war with Austria, right?
But Bismarck saw that Prussia wasn't ready, militarily speaking.
Right. So he actually advocated for delaying the conflict. Now, that might have looked weak to some people, but it was a brilliant strategic move.
Absolutely. He understood that timing was everything. By waiting, he ultimately put Prussia in a stronger position down the line. Okay, now let's talk about deception, and specifically how distraction plays a key role.
Like a magic trick, right?
Right.
While the audience is focused on one hand, the other hand is doing the real work.
Exactly. And our sources talk about how you can use a desired object or even just an idea as a decoy. Draw people's attention to that while you're doing something else entirely behind the scenes.
Kid Wilde, the con artist, was a master of this. He'd create these elaborate schemes, often using middlemen, to make everything seem legit. People were so focused on the details that they missed the bigger picture.
And that fake gold mine scam by Arnold and Slack is another perfect example. They didn't just show a few gold nuggets. They created this whole believable setup, even brought in supposed experts.
It was all about misdirection, creating this illusion of legitimacy to cover up the fact that there was no gold.
Okay, shifting gears again. Law 4 tells us to always say less than necessary.
The idea here is that when you're vague, people tend to read more into what you're saying. They fill in the blanks themselves. Silence can be powerful, too. It projects an air of authority.
Louis XIV, the Sun King, he was famous for this. He'd often just say, "I shall see," when people asked him for a decision. So simple, but so effective. His ministers would be left wondering what he meant, gave him this aura of mystery. It also meant they only found out his decision when it was already happening.
Talk about keeping people on their toes. Okay, let's talk about something a little less tangible, but just as important. Reputation.
Yeah, your reputation's huge.
Right.
It colors how people see everything you do. The same action can be perceived totally differently depending on who's doing it.
The story of Mitsisia in the Wei Kingdom really brings this home. When he was in favor with the king, people thought he was generous, considerate. But then, when he fell out of favor, those same actions were seen as selfish, arrogant.
It wasn't him that changed. It was how people saw him. His reputation took a hit, and suddenly everything he did was interpreted in a negative light.
Makes you think about how fragile reputation can be, right? Okay, now for a more direct approach to influence. Law 9. Win through your actions, never through argument.
Basically saying actions speak louder than words. Don't waste time trying to win arguments. Prove your point by doing something.
Torrigiano and Michelangelo, the sculptors, that's a great example. Torrigiano, in a fit of rage, broke Michelangelo's nose because they disagreed about art.
Talk about letting things get out of hand.
Right. Michelangelo, on the other hand, when people criticized his David statue, he didn't argue with them. He just subtly changed their perspective, suggested they look at it from a different angle.
So much smarter. No argument, no conflict, just a subtle shift in perception. Let's touch on anger, shall we? Law 3 is all about controlling your emotions, but it also mentions using anger strategically.
Yeah, the idea is that if you can provoke anger in your opponent, it throws them off balance, makes them act rashly.
But the key is you have to stay calm.
Exactly. Napoleon's outburst at Talleyrand is a cautionary tale. He lost his cool, and it actually made him look weak. Talleyrand didn't even flinch.
So provoking anger in others can be a tool, but losing your own temper is almost always a bad move.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about something that might sound a bit cynical, but I think there's a lot of wisdom here. Law 40. Despise the free lunch. Be wary of anything that seems free. There are almost always strings attached, whether it's a sense of obligation or some kind of manipulation down the line.
The law stresses the importance of valuing what you pay for, maintaining your independence.
When you get something for nothing, you don't appreciate it as much, right? And the giver often feels like they have some leverage over you.
Okay, let's move on to navigating those tricky relationships with people in positions of power. Law 1. Never outshine the master.
It's all about not making your superiors feel threatened, even unintentionally. If they perceive you as a threat, they might try to undermine you.
Fouquet's party for Louis XIV is the classic example. He wanted to impress the king, but he ended up making Louis feel insecure, which led to Fouquet's downfall.
The key takeaways here are, first, don't make your bosses feel inadequate, and second, recognize that some people in power are just naturally more insecure than others.
It's a tough balance, right? You want to showcase your talents, but you don't want to step on anyone's toes. Now, Law 10 touches on the importance of choosing your companions wisely.
Law 10. Infection. Avoid the unhappy and unlucky. It's about recognizing that negativity can be contagious. Hanging around with people who are always down on their luck can drag you down too.
And Law 11, learn to keep people dependent on you. It's all about figuring out what people need and positioning yourself as someone they can rely on.
It's not necessarily about manipulation, but understanding how to make yourself valuable.
Okay, last but not least, let's talk about building a loyal following. Law 27. Play on people's need to believe to create a cult-like following.
This one gets into the psychology of wanting to believe in something bigger than yourself. People crave meaning, something that gives them a sense of purpose.
Borey, with his talk of secret knowledge, and Michael Shipak, the mountain doctor who claimed to have healing powers, they both tapped into this.
They gave people something to believe in, something that made them feel special, and that created a powerful sense of loyalty.
So taking a step back, looking at all these different examples, I think the main takeaway is that power dynamics are complex. It's not just about brute force. It's about understanding human nature, being strategic, and managing how people see you.
And that's what this deep dive has been all about, giving you a new set of lenses to view these dynamics, both in your own life and in the world around you.
So here's a little thought experiment for you. Think about a recent interaction you had, maybe at work, maybe with a friend, family. Now look at it through the lens of these principles we've talked about. What do you see that you might have missed before? Any hidden power dynamics at play? It's something to think about, something to explore.
And on that note, thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful.